Hey everybody, I wanted to go ahead and put something out real quick on kind of like an update on my research. One of the things that I kind of do is I am going through a lot of material all the time. And so these videos that I put out in a way are kind of my own notes. If I don't do that, then sometimes I can lose track or I won't write it down and then I won't remember. And so making these videos is a good way for me to remember and share with you what I'm finding at the same moment. So of course, lately, if you've noticed, there's been a concentration on Atlantis, and Atlantis is extremely important in all of this. And now we have the evidence to show that there are important people in our history and even the mainstream science area that have taken it very seriously. So that being said, it's extremely important to know where we come from. And if we take a look at all these cultures around the world, we can see that they are all associated in some way. For example, the Atlantis, when it sank, we had people and stories associated to people that went to the west, which ended up being the Mayans, people that went to the east, which ended up being the Egyptians. And on both sides, we see these pyramids, right? So we can see that there is a connection there. Well, in all of this, and going back to the first thing that started all of this stuff was the whole idea with Orion, right? And the Orion Nebula specifically. So guys like Robert Bauval and Graham Hancock and these guys, they've shown us that there was this Orion correlation, which kind of gave us a start. But the Orion Nebula, and more specifically, is where I think we're headed in all of this, because that is something that you kind of need the three stars to kind of help you get there. But once you see those three stars, and then you go into the text a little more, and then you take a look at what's in these cathedrals, which nobody can explain how they were able to see this kind of stuff, but clearly they were. And obviously I was right about it, since if you look in all of these various texts, even the vortex or whatever that I saw that was inside of the trapezium that NASA came out a year later and said was there. They said there was a black hole they thought was there. I mean, either my intuition is extremely good, or I don't know. I mean, something. But obviously, I could see things that other people could not see. I don't know why that is. Probably I was just giving it more attention. But I found a very interesting connection tonight. I have also discovered that the church has had their dirty little fingers in our history and other cultures' history, basically trying to destroy things along the way in order to keep us from understanding our past. Okay, so, and this goes from burning books when the Mayans were, after they were conquered, they basically tried to go in and, well, they did. They ended up burning a lot of their books. And then on the Hindu side, which I was unaware of, they had pushed, along with some scholars, this whole idea of something called the Aryan invasion, which the whole purpose of was to make the Hindu people look like they were savages by misinterpreting their texts and so forth. And anyway, I don't want to go into detail on that. I just want to kind of share with you that the church has had their little dirty fingers in just about everything. Okay, so well, that being said, I found a very interesting connection I want to share with you. A very interesting connection between Chinese and Orion and the Hebrews and Orion as well, and its association to the Trinity. Okay, this is really interesting stuff. So the Hebrew letters and the Chinese letters have something about them that are different than what we see in, for example, like English or stuff like that. And that is they're very symbolic. And the symbols they play a very important part. And also, if you take a look at the names of them, you will see that the names are very similar. And then when you take a look at the artwork, and one of them I'll share with you with Manly P. Hall, what I'm basically telling you is there's more than one way to cross-reference and check these things. So in order to be able to analyze it properly, you have to have more than just a far out thing. You kind of have to have some kind of repetitivity or more than one way to show something, right? So that's what we're going to do here real quick. So I had this guy. His name is, what is his name? And pardon me if I get this wrong. It's Shen Hui Sang, okay? And so this guy reminded me of something regarding Orion because I had posted something on this. And you guys probably remember this picture of this stone, and you see the three belt stars, and of course the Orion Nebula right up here is the flame, which is associated to the eye inside of this triangle. And of course this can be related to the Mayans, which we'll go into in a different video. But all this stuff is kind of coming together as far as how they're related to each other, right? So anyway, so he says that the Chinese called Orion Shen, okay? Now that's really important because when you take a look at this, and he goes, Shen means enter, and he says Shen means spirit. Okay, now that's really, really important. We'll go down and show that in just a second. So he's wondering how these guys, did they know about all this stuff, or were they connected? So I started to take a look at it. I said, that's very good information. I said, thanks. And so he started, I had him provide me a link where I was taking a look at this, and the three stars right here, and you can see the three stars, Chinese constellation, and indeed it's called Shen, right? So it occurred to me that the Hebrew letter for spirit, which he also says Shen means spirit up here. Where is it? Shen. He says Shen means spirit in another Chinese character, right? So Shen is also this letter for the Hebrew alphabet. It's actually pronounced Shen, right? Same pronunciation. And if we take a look in the Secret Teaching of All Ages, this is really interesting because if we put the Shen letter in the middle of Jehovah, we actually get Jehoshua, which is Jesus, right? And if we take a look at Jesus on the cross, we always see him up there, and we usually see the Spirit right around his head reaching that area of Doth. Okay, so, and here's an example of that right here. And so what he was showing us here in the Secret Teaching of All Ages is that this Hebrew triad right here, that a long time ago when they made art and they did stuff like this, that it was a secret, but this is the Trinity that we see on the Tree of Life. And so when we take a look at this information right here, we can see that it's the same when we take a look at this art they've done. What he showed us in the Secret Teaching of All Ages, I found in this art, and you can see that he is doing this exact same thing with the art. Here's Jesus on the cross, and this area right here is associated to spirit, moving up until he reaches a point of Doth. Okay, but the point is this is the letter Shen, pronounced the same, and it means spirit. Okay, and it is pronounced the same as what we see in the Chinese character, which is also called Shen. So it's really interesting because Shen also means Orion, and Orion also has the three belt stars. And when we take a look at the all these areas across culture, this area is associated to procreation or creation. And even when we read the ancient Hindu texts, we see that when they start speaking of creation, they're speaking of this whole thing about Prajapati coming out, and that's going to bring me to another video because I want to show you some interesting artwork that's associated with that ties the Hindus to the Mayans. So all this is kind of coming together, but I wanted to share this with you real quick because Shen is pronounced the same in Chinese and for the letter and also for Hebrew. And for the Chinese, Shen is associated to Orion, and in the Hebrew, it's associated to the Trinity. Very interesting stuff. So I wanted to share that with you because when we take a look at the nebula And let me just get to this real quick for you. If I go into my reference album, this is from the Ladder of Lights, and it says Sephira Kether, right? Now, this is where Kether is, up here at the top. And this is the crown, the summit, and it says World of Expression, Prima Mobile Nebula. So you have these planets that you go through. And when you think of creation the way you would actually think of it actually occurring, right? The first thing that happens is you have a nebula that comes into existence in space. That nebula creates the planets, it creates the stars. This is exactly what the Orion Nebula does. And then it zigzags down. It creates these things, and right after the nebula, you have this point where the visible becomes invisible. The physical universe turns into the invisible universe. And it's spoken of in the Hindu texts as the mind bringing forth itself, that spark, into the waters, and then creating this form out of it, which then creates the rest of the chain. So in all of these cases, it's all pointing to the same thing, and for some reason, all of these cultures are pointing right here, right exactly where I've got my mouse. They are pointing to this particular area, which apparently has a vortex right there associated with the phenomenon that NASA is calling a black hole. Whether you believe in a black hole or not makes no difference. What I'm talking about is there is a certain phenomenon that is associated with it. And even if we take a look at the this picture I showed you here, it's showing us the same thing. It's that eye that comes out, and that eye is associated with the same thing that we see in the Mayan culture. So I'm just kind of going around tying all this stuff together, showing how all of these guys are related. And you know, it's because of the artwork that I've seen in these cathedrals that made all this stuff kick off. It's obvious that these cultures knew about this place before they said they knew about it with the telescope. So somebody's either lying or something mystical happened, because they say that the Orion Nebula was not even visible before 1610, and I think that's BS. I think it was, because if it wasn't, these cultures wouldn't know about it. And I've got Wikipedia links and all kinds of links showing that people are admitting that the Mayans knew that this place was associated to it, and they even called it fire. They called it everything associated with creation. They knew about it. So why is it that there's a Harvard article out there that says Orion Nebula, where in history is it? And they go into a huge talk about why is it all these early astronomers just somehow missed it? And so you could probably ask yourself, why is it that Galileo was confined? You know, has the church ever been guilty of trying to keep people from coming out with the truth? Well, of course they have. So someone's lying, or there is some kind of a mystical thing happening here, but I just wanted to share this with you real quick. It's all kind of coming together as I continue. So you guys take care. I'll talk to you soon.